Hello, I'm Tom Gamble,
And I'm Max Pross.
and we wrote the episode of Mr. Monk and the Naked Man, or we at least did the first draft. Andy and the rest of the writers polished it up and made it what you saw today.
And it's the first and only episode of the show we've been involved with so far.
Although we've known Breckman for a long time, we actually met Andy back in 1981. We were all at the David Letterman show late night, right when it started. And I actually remember one of the first jokes that got on the air that was written by a writer who wasn't Dave or Merrill Markoe, the creators, and it was Andy. It was Small Town News, and it was a wall, and somebody had spray painted Fred on the wall. And the headline said, "Police search for a vandal." And Andy Breckman's joke was, "I'm no detective, but they should look for someone named Fred." And that was Andy's joke, and he was thinking about detectives way back then, 29 years ago or whenever. You know, Monk hating the nudists, that was an idea that Breckman told us about. So that was something, he had said this would be really interesting because we've never seen him really this passionately.
Yeah, and I know they were all really into that, that big Lee J. Cobb scene at the end of 12 Angry Men. I think they thought, you've seen him afraid of things a lot on the show. He's kind of afraid of everything. And it would be nice if he actually had this crazy, irrational hatred of something. It would just be a good way to do a sort of intense prejudice story, but keeping it silly, since it's really hard to find people who abhor nudism the way Monk does.
And I get, so what Andy told us was they shot that scene first, the one where he's really spewing all the hatred towards the nudist. And according to Andy, people at USA were like, "Hey, what's going on here? This is much more extreme than we've seen him before."
Yeah, they saw the dailies and thought Andy had turned the show into some kind of crazy Playhouse 90 thing. It was all about this sociological rant about racism and Stottlemyre firing him. It was the first thing they saw. So they thought the show was really going off on a crazy tangent.
For those of you under 60 watching this, Playhouse 90 was a popular show in the early days of TV.
But yeah, according to Andy, USA was really freaked out that the thing was way too serious. But as journeyman comedy writer, Tom and I are more than used to having people look at our work and say, "This is way too serious. There's no jokes in this thing at all."
We were very disappointed.
We thought this would be funny. So.
That's funny. The scene where Monk remembers his birth, that idea actually was just going to be a joke in the scene. And
well, we were looking for something. We needed a reason, a very deep-rooted reason for him to hate nudists. So we thought, something obviously in his childhood must have happened to him while he was naked. What's the first bad experience you have when you're naked? And we thought, I guess the trauma of birth. So we just kind of threw it in as a joke. But I think Andy thought, maybe that would be a good thing to actually have him turn around in the story.
Yeah, when we wrote our first draft, that was just sort of like a joke in the scene. And then Andy and the writers fleshed that out a little bit more for the final draft.
We had a lot of extra jokes that I think for very good reasons Andy left out of the final script.
One thing we had was in the jail scene, we actually had also in the cell a skinhead, a Nazi guy who was also appalled hearing Monk make these racist comments. So he was even so much to appall the skinhead.
Yeah, even the skinhead was sickened by Monk's prejudice. We also had a lot of, I think, visual jokes about Monk when he realizes he's got a problem trying to fight his fear and hatred of nudists he goes to an art gallery and is looking at famous naked statues, trying to stare at their genitals without freaking out. And even the Coppertone, the little naked girl in the Coppertone ad kind of freaks him out. And
yeah, he's in the park and he goes by a little girl in a stroller who's got a nude Barbie, and that freaked him out. And it was sort of kind of Simpson-y kind of things that didn't end up. We also had an idea that we were kicking around that we didn't put in, but one of the nudists being this shy lady with her hair in a bun, sort of a librarian type, and she's really kind of shy. And then once they have to put their clothes on at the courthouse, she becomes really sexy and confident and lets her hair down. It was the old switcheroo, we call it in the comedy world, but
and there was a joke in the final scene with all the nudists. I can't even remember, since I haven't seen the final show yet. I can't remember if Andy left it in where one of the nudists sees another nudist, because they had to get dressed to go to the meeting at City Hall, and goes like, "Oh, I don't recognize you with your clothes on. Is that you?" Where they
right. There's more of that.
The nudists actually couldn't recognize each other if they weren't naked.
Yeah, we had more small talk in the trailer when Monk is caught in the closet and the guy drops a pencil. We had more stuff where they're talking about a beehive that's on the beach that they got to get rid of, and a bake-off, and should they be able to use pot holders or not, And
there
there was a big discussion about just what kind of clothes.
There's
you
a lot
can
more
wear.
of everything. Why the show didn't want to pay for another 30 days of shooting, I don't know, but just stick all our stuff in. But